The whispers continue. Evan Stewart could return.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Individual standouts from Saturday's game against Rutgers. What a game that was. Why not keep reliving that wonderful night? A bounce-back performance. Evan Stewart could very well be back. Some coaching talk. All in today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. So, there have been whispers, Instagram posts, a listing of Evan Stewart on the injury report as out. That is an indication that he could one day move to questionable. Now, if that were to happen, think about an Oregon offense that has Dakorien Moore, Kenyon Sadiq, and Evan Stewart as a part of it. That's a pretty awesome thing to think about. And I would absolutely love, I'm going to get to the downside because I do recognize that it is there. I'm 100% not going to ignore that on this show. But if Evan Stewart can come back, man, I tell you what, Oregon would just have an insane amount of pass catching talent. And the way that they have built this room over the last several years would once again be threatening to be the most talented core group of all time. If you can get him back sometime in November, that stretch run, frankly, is when you're going to need him the most. Oregon should be fine for the foreseeable future. If this were to happen in November, the game that I would most want to have Evan Stewart back for is the USC game. Not that I don't think Oregon's defense is good, because I believe that it is great. I love the way the secondary has played this year. USC has a talented group of receivers, and sometimes when you get great offensive minds and talented players in a game, even with great defenses, it can turn into a shootout. And I would love to have Evan Stewart available for that game. Maybe I feel like we need him against Minnesota. Maybe I feel like you want to have him in that spot against the Golden Gophers because they can play sneaky good defense. Oregon shouldn't struggle with Minnesota at home. But the next three games for the Ducks, maybe he'd be back for Iowa. Maybe in a game where it could be lower scoring, you're going up against a great defense, maybe you'd like to have him back to provide that kind of boost. This week against Wisconsin, that's not, I don't think, even in the cards. Iowa and Minnesota should not, emphasis on should not, be a major threat for the Ducks, and the offense will be okay. But for USC, for the Washington game, I would be more than a little stoked to have a guy back with as much experience and as much talent and as much big game experience. We have not seen Dante Moore ever throw a pass to Evan Stewart. And here's the other reason that it excites. Well, let me get to the potential downside of it, something I talked about a bit on yesterday's show. The number of weapons Oregon has sometimes makes it hard to get them all involved. And guys would get pushed down the depth chart. I think the biggest anti-beneficiary of Evan Stewart's return would be Gary Bryant Jr. I think he would see the highest percentage drop-off because, Cooper Perry played a few snaps on Saturday against Rutgers, and Malik Benson has had a role from time to time. But I think and I could make the case for Benson as well. He and Gary Bryant have really similar numbers this year. Benson is 18 for 277 and 3 touchdowns. Bryant is 22 for 266 and 4 touchdowns, with respective long receptions of 44 and 49 yards. I think that if you were to bring Evan Stewart back and he's fully healthy, if he gets back up to speed, and that can always be an iffy proposition. And yes, I just thought of Ife Obadegwu when I said that. It can be a dicey proposition. When a guy's been injured and out for that long, getting him back up to speed in the Big Ten, like that can certainly be difficult. Maybe he wouldn't be 100%. Maybe he'd be a situational guy early on. But if you can tell me he's 100%, Oregon's best receiving core on the field in 11 personnel is whoever's hot at tailback, Kenyon Sadiq at tight end, Dakorien Moore, Evan Stewart, and probably, I don't know, Benson or Bryant. I think they've both been good this year. So the downside is, hey, how do you get all of these guys the ball? My immediate counter to that thought, because I was pondering this, and I went, well, that is a downside. But then I had this thought. Doesn't it make it easier at some level to get Dakorien and Kenyon Sadiq the ball? Could. Evan Stewart can attract a lot of attention. And the other thing with Evan Stewart is I love what Gary Bryant has done this year. And maybe it would have a bigger impact on Malik Benson, who's been, a downfield kind of threat. Oregon tried to take a shot to him on Saturday. He couldn't quite haul it in, and that's what Evan Stewart was really good at last year with the Ducks. You think that Ohio State game, you think the number of plays he made down the field. I think having him in the red zone would be great as well. He's a guy that you can throw 50-50 passes to. Oregon only has so many of those. It's not something they do a whole heck of a lot. Dante hasn't been great at it, throwing the fade routes to the corner of the end zone this year, but Evan Stewart is someone that can take the top off the defense. And if you are once again able to have that caliber weapon on the outside, maybe that creates more one-on-ones for Kenyon Sadiq. Maybe it creates more one-on-ones for Dakorien Moore. We saw what Dakorien Moore can do when you put him in a one-on-one spot last week against Rutgers. They'll play better defensive backs this year. But the more weapons you can have, I just like to have him there. Just as a veteran presence in that room, a guy with so much proven production that I know I can rely on if he is fully healthy to do literally anything in the route tree. Guy could run routes behind the line of scrimmage or 40 yards down the field, whatever you need. So, yeah, I think it would be awesome. Sometimes a wrinkle like that, even with a player as talented as Stewart, I think could reasonably have, somewhat of a downside effect. Like, they don't quite know what the flow is, or you're disrupting what's been a really good situation here. And, you've seen it with football over the years in a number of different positions where you just get Wally pipped. You get Tom Brady to Drew Bledsoe situation where it's, got a good rhythm with this guy now, and I know you're back off injury, but I don't think at wide receiver that'd be as big of a problem. And I think he does bring, I love watching Gary Bryant, and he does a lot of really good stuff. You're not throwing 50-50 balls down the field to Gary Bryant. And they've done that with Benson this year. I think Evan Stewart is better at it. I think Benson is solid, but I think Evan Stewart is better. So I think he immediately becomes one of your top 3 pass catchers. And for Dante Moore, man, how fun must it be for Dante Moore to play quarterback? And if he's suddenly back there and bringing Evan Stewart in the fold later this season, this would be a pretty significant development. I don't think he would become Oregon's leading receiver immediately. I think that would continue to be Dakorien Moore. I think he's a guy who in a given game could maybe lead Oregon in receiving yards, maybe. But even if he were to just come back and be available for a couple of key situations, a third down, a fourth down, an explosive play, anything like that, I think that would be a boost to the Oregon offense. And not that I feel down about where the status of Oregon's playmakers are at, but coming into this year, the expectation on my end from what I had been told was, he's probably out for the year. Maybe, but he's probably out for the year. Now it's looking like, hey, he might actually come back. And if you add him to this offense, Will Stein would have a lot of weapons at his disposal. Not everybody would be able to get the ball. Only one football, only so many plays, but yeah, I'd be pretty stoked if Evan Stewart could come back this year. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. My favorite segment to be able to do. Can only do it less than 15 times a year. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they are worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track. And that can mean leaving money on the table. You don't want to do that. That is why you should start using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. So if you have that one financial goal you've been trying to get to for a long time and you just haven't been able to get over the hump, Monarch is here to help you out. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. It's half off. Pretty darn good. That's monarch.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarch.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season's here. FanDuel has an offer that you just don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What a deal. College football is back, and it's just beautiful. To make it even better and more exciting, you got to check out FanDuel. Prop bets, point spreads, money lines, it's all over there. Everything that you could possibly want for every big game and beyond. For the sickos out there, FanDuel's got you covered. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. Yesterday on the show, I forgot my second segment set. The second segment had a moment where I forgot how to speak English. Is that a coincidence? I mean, post hoc ergo propter hoc, but also, no, not a coincidence whatsoever. And the funny thing is I actually am recording this show at the same time or immediately after I recorded yesterday's show because I'm having a procedure on Monday, so I need to get ahead on recording stuff. Anyway, let's get to individual standouts. So when I went back and watched the game, I had some big picture thoughts yesterday. If you want to hear those, go listen to the second segment on yesterday's show. But the individual standouts from Saturday, going beyond the obvious, Dante Moore and Kenyon Sadiq that put up the big stats, the guys that kind of flew under the radar but deserved a shout out. I am liking this first guy more and more every single week. And he has cemented himself into Oregon's defense at a position that was up in the air. There was a battle. We knew who was going to be involved. It got a wrinkle with an injury in fall camp. Perhaps Trey McNutt would have played more at safety, but how much better could Aaron Flowers look? Dude forced 2 turnovers. Maybe this is too obvious of an individual standout, but I just want to give him love on the show because he's been playing phenomenally good football. And he got his first career interception on Saturday on the overthrow that was generated because of some pressure by the defensive line. Goes back to something I've talked about a lot here on the show, that any defensive coach will tell you, you cannot have great defensive backs if you do not have a good pass rush, because you can just get asked to cover for too long. But the guy he was trying to hit, Calic Manis, was open over the middle. The throw sailed, Flowers in position, but I think he's going to get downhill, make the stop. I don't know if he forces an incompletion, but he's just around the football a lot. And, PFF only gives him a coverage grade of 67.8. There haven't been really any major busts. There was one yesterday that Rutgers failed to take advantage of. And, of all the young guys in the secondary, the highest rated recruit of the bunch from the last 2 cycles is Naeem Offord, who played well yesterday, except for the fact that for the second or third time this year, he did not get the coverage call correct, and that's what led to a guy running wide open. He traveled with his man, or the guy that was in his, I don't know if he was specifically in man or zone coverage or who was wrong, but the guy ran right into Naeem Offord's third, and if they were in cover 3, he should not have continued to run with the outside receiver. And, they had an in-breaking route and then a wheel behind, and Offord vacated, and the guy was wide open. So that continues to be a point where he needs to improve, but I don't know where else Aaron Flowers can improve. I guess according to PFF, it's in coverage. The interception wasn't about, some individual play he made, but the other play I wanted to highlight was, pretty sure it was in the second half, Calic Manis throws one of those fade routes to the corner. Theron Johnson's in great position. He had a pretty good game, I'd say. I still think he's the 3rd best outside corner behind Brandon Finney and Iffy, of course, but he had a pretty good game, and he gets his hand on the ball, and Flowers is there, avoids the targeting penalty, hits the receiver, confirms that there's going to be a dislodge of the football. He forced a fumble in this game. He might be the best tackler on this Oregon team. You ask me right now, guys running in the open field, which duck do I trust the most to go make a tackle? It's Aaron Flowers. Without question, it is Aaron Flowers. He has been so good in helping Oregon's run defense be better because he triggers downhill so quickly, and he is such a good tackler. I continue to love watching him play football. Another guy I want to shout out who, like Oregon's football team, needed a bounce back after last week, Jamari Johnson had the big 50-plus yard reception on the catch and run, and that was not, a screen or a ball in the flat, and he made one guy miss. He just cooks a defensive back on a sail route and then rumbles down the sideline. Looked awesome. But the blocking from Jamari Johnson in this game, I highlighted the O-line. I'm going to get to them more in just a moment because two guys in particular were really awesome on Saturday. But Jamari Johnson and Kenyon Sadiq blocked incredibly well. And you cannot overlook that in the success of a running game, how important it is to have your tight ends be really good blockers. And Jamari Johnson had some really good blocks on Saturday from what I saw when I went back and watched the game. So he was good in pass protection as well. Oregon shored up that. I don't think Rutgers brought as many simulated pressures and complex blitzes, but they brought a couple, and Dante Moore wasn't sacked and had plenty of time to throw. So I think you got to credit the O-line and Jamari Johnson and Kenyon Sadiq. The way they blocked in this game was really, really good. And it was great to see Jamari get involved in the pass game as well after the pretty bad drop last week against Indiana that was really costly. So another guy I want to shout, well, two guys. Poncho's awesome. He keeps getting better and better in the run game. He's always been great as a pass blocker, continuing to take steps forward, I believe, as a run blocker as well. I want to see if PFF agrees with that. But I thought Poncho had a good game. When the offensive line is operating as it should, they have to have their guy making the calls be prepared and be ready to go. And he was. And he absolutely was. Yeah, Poncho's run blocking grade is just 67. Pass blocking grade is 85. But I really want to shout out the guy who is Oregon's highest graded offensive lineman and the seventh highest graded at his position in all of college football. And that is Emmanuel Prenon, who has a pass blocking grade of 90 and a run blocking grade of 78. I hesitate here because I was about to make a really big comparison. I just want to soften it. I still want to make this analogy here. It is not the same because nothing will ever be the same as the guy I'm going to compare him to in here. So just brace yourselves for that. Don't overreact. When Oregon needed a big play in Penei Sewell's career, they ran behind him almost every single time, and it worked a lot. If you asked me right now, Oregon needs to pick up a yard and they're going to run the ball, who do you want to run behind? It is Emmanuel Prenon. And I have been bullish on Poncho, hyping him up as a potential finalist for the Remington Award this year, given to the best center that JPJ won a couple years ago. I fully believe that Poncho is having that kind of season and can be that kind of player, especially if he were to come back next year. My goodness, I'd imagine he'd be the favorite to win it next year if he came back, or one of them, certainly. But Emmanuel Prenon is Oregon's best offensive lineman. Poncho has lived up to my expectations this year, which were high. Emmanuel Prenon has been the best. When you go watch him block, he does everything well. He moves guys out of the way. He can turn defensive tackles to create lanes. He climbs to the second level. He can absolutely maul guys up front. He's really good in pass protection, passed off a number of stunts and twists with Isaiah World seamlessly. He is strong. He is bullish. This dude is playing great football. And he is Oregon's best offensive lineman right now on a group that might be getting a change. We'll see if Harkey and Janoris Wilson wind up being the two on the right side with Harkey at guard and Wilson at tackle going forward. But I don't know that there's anybody that could watch Oregon's offensive line and not think. PFF agrees. PFF is not everything, but it's something. And I agree with what they see, which is Emmanuel Prenon was just bulldozing dudes all day. They could not generate pressure on Prenon all day. And the standard that he sets at that guard spot, I think, is indicative of how, Iuli has a lot of room to grow and why they're trying to find a different combination there. Iuli is a pass blocker, elite. Elite. As a run blocker, below average. Prenon is elite at both. It's an awesome thing. If you love offensive line play, figure out a way to either get all 22, watch a broadcast back, or at least watch highlights on YouTube. Just watch 75 and White from Saturday. That'll fire you up. Lastly, actually not, no, I'm gonna save that one because I also wanted to, I just forgot to write it down in my notes. I thought Oregon's linebackers played much better. I think the physicality is still just okay, but they were making a lot more plays, and boy, they are fast. All of them. They are really, really fast. Jerry Mixon is really fast. He had a much better game. Much better game. As long as the physicality can be good enough, the speed will allow them to be a good unit. And I think the linebackers are a relative weakness, not a downright concern. Last year, the safeties for Oregon were a downright concern. This year, linebackers are the weakest unit of the three, or if you want to split the safeties and corners, the four for Oregon defensively, or if you want to split the defensive line, the five. Linebackers would rank last, no doubt. It's a relative weakness. They're still solid, and I thought they had a good game. But the individual standout here defensively that has flown under the radar all year, Tatum Teoti is becoming a monster, an absolute certified beast that does everything. He is strong, fast, technically sound, high IQ football player, had the strip sack of Calais McManus this past week, and I just look at the way that he has developed over the last couple of years, which would send Washington fans into a tizzy, the way that he has grown, and he wasn't a super highly rated recruit. But again, I'm not trying to have that conversation right now. I'll save that for when Roman and I talk later this year. But I think that for what Tatum Teoti has needed to do this year, he has stepped up. That's filled the Jordan Birch role. Mateo didn't change positions. Maybe he's playing a little more defensive end, two hands in the ground at times, but Tatum was sliding in to fill Jordan Birch's spot. I think he's done a good job. I don't think there's been a massive drop-off, and does he have the game-changing ability that Jordan Birch had? Not quite. But has he been really good? Yeah. Yeah, he has. I've just been so impressed, and he looks faster without, sacrificing strength. PFF's got him graded 83 overall, 79 against the run, 81 rushing the passer, and just 64 in coverage. So I think that he's just been really, really good. And on Saturday, he was making plays. He was active. He was physical. He's a menace for any offensive line trying to block him right now. And up front, he and Bear Alexander, I think, have been Oregon's two best defensive linemen. I think Mateo could be fourth, frankly, which is saying something because Mateo's been good. As I talked about yesterday, he hadn't been great, but he's been good. But Bear is incredibly disruptive. Amari Washington's a beast. Tatum is awesome. If Mateo Uyunglele is your fourth best defensive lineman, that is freakishly great, which is what the defensive line is. So those are my individual standouts. If you think I missed somebody, I did in real time. I just realized it. Jeremiah McLaughlin, third down conversion in the game. That is not an easy catch. He only had two in this one, but the catch he made on third down when Dante Moore is rolling out and he gets the foot inside of the white line, that was a heck of a football catch. That is a heck of a football catch, and he is, Oregon's fifth receiving option on this team? Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches. So, all right, now I'm done with individual standouts. If you still think I missed somebody, hey, drop them in the comments below. Let's talk coaching, shall we? Yes, indeed we shall. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I love it. You love it. We all love it. The energy in the stands, the rivalries, the tailgates, there is just nothing like it. But let's be real. Getting the tickets to the games can be a real hassle, more of a battle than the game itself. None of us want that. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I have used Game Time multiple times in the last couple of months. I save money compared to other ticketing services. I went to see John Mulaney with my brother in Vegas not long ago. Guess what? Compared the same row to other ticketing services, saved hundreds of dollars for 2 tickets. Game Time is the way to go. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So we'll talk about the coaching staff and then do a little trivia to wrap up here on Tuesday. Remember last week when Will Stein needed to be fired? Maybe he heard you, and I don't know. Anyway, I understand the frustration because last week was really bad. But 750 yards is a lot. I don't care who you're playing. Does Dan need to hire better coordinators? Nope. What you want to see when a game like last week happens is number one, a response, but number two, progress. And there have been, I think, two different ways to look at Oregon's coordinators. Well, that's not the perfect way to put it. You look at each coordinator in a different way. For Tosh Lupoi, it has been progress from what it's been. How is the progression? And the progression's been there. And he had a signature game against Penn State. And the defense played well enough against Indiana, and the offense was a problem. For Will Stein, he came out of the gates as the OC, and in big games was really good, guns blazing. But now it's kind of about striving towards perfection, even though it's unattainable, and that's how you get progress. So this is a Spencer Scale of Agreement take. There were two of them here from The Duck Abides. Dan's next coordinator hires need to be experienced, been there, done that, seen it all guys. No more up-and-coming types. I've seen it work both ways. I've seen it not work both ways. You know, I don't think there is just one way to go out and win in college football. Joe Brady took the world by storm with LSU in 2019. He was a young up-and-comer. Worked pretty well. Chip Kelly was hired to Ohio State last year. It worked pretty well. Either way can work. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. Coaches that have been around for a long time could be more rigid to change, stuck in their ways. Young and up-and-coming offensive coaches like Will Stein can have a lot of learning moments, just like players. Dan Lanning is a head coach, has had learning moments over the years. So do I think Dan Lanning will have to hire another offensive coordinator one day? Yeah, of course. Of course he will. Will Stein will be a head coach at some point. Some of you will be happy about that. Okay. But do I think that he automatically needs to go for someone that's at least 45 years old? No. Does that mean you ignore somebody in that age range? Also no. I think you try and find the best candidate regardless of how old he is. So, yeah, no, that's a 2. That's a 2. Here's another one. James Franklin to Stanford. You know, James Franklin to Stanford. That would actually fit. There's a lot of fit there. That's interesting. For how much I like it, yeah, actually, that's an 8. I kind of like that move. That'd be interesting. I think James Franklin will wind up being the head coach of Wisconsin, but that's just me. Speaking of Wisconsin, Oregon's upcoming opponent, Dan Lanning has a chance to be a contributor to a fourth coach being fired. Fickle is absolutely on the hot seat. Wisconsin's been dreadful this year, and if Dan Lanning goes and pulls an Oklahoma State or even a Rutgers from last week and just blows them out, yeah, Wisconsin might make a change afterwards. I mean, they should have already made a change, but that's beside the point. Dirk sends this one in. SSA, random thought watching both games tonight. Is one of the reasons that Oregon's transition into the there's a funny question. Transition into the Big Ten was so graceful because we really didn't have one assigned TV network, A team, etc. Thanks, Larry Scott. I figure you have possibly just a little more insight into this given your broadcast experience. Even just listening to say Sangapolo Tele compared to how some big name broadcasters have attempted to say his name, mighty incorrectly, fact check true. I have to imagine Oregon's national brand prior with exposure across major TV networks made things a little bit easier on broadcasters, our image, etc. Oh, so you're not asking about the production on the field and it relating to the broadcast. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing for broadcasters when it comes to getting names right, I take a lot of pride in that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you as a play-by-play announcer I've gotten every single name right in every single moment. I can tell you that when I have screwed up because I don't study the pronunciation guide as thoroughly as I should, or I forget to write it down and then make a misstep or anything, it bothers the hell out of me. It really does. Because when I hear other announcers do it, it bugs me a whole heck of a lot. It is when you are doing college sports, you are given, especially for football, you have the pronunciation for every single player's name. There is no excuse. Some are just going to be more difficult. But if you're doing your homework going into the game, then that's something that you should be able to work on. So I don't know exactly what you're asking with, like, they haven't have one assigned no team has one assigned TV network. You know, Ohio State can play on CBS or they can be on Fox for Big Noon. You know, Oregon had Big Noon kickoff this year and they were on Fox. They've had a lot of games on CBS. Like it just kind of depends on what the matchups are, how everything gets shuffled around. I do know that, unfortunately, at the higher levels of broadcasting, and it is not every guy, I don't even think it's most guys, but I've seen it more than a few times. There are guys that get to, you know, a really high level in this field that I love so much, and they can kind of mail it in on the fundamentals. Colin Cowherd's a great example, actually. And I have a great deal of respect for Colin Cowherd. He's a big influence on me as a sports talk host. As I'm talking to you right now, there are a lot. Colin Cowherd, big influence. I've never met him before. I'd love to one day. I don't listen to his show anymore, but I used to for a long time, and that helped me generate my style and certain techniques that I employ when I'm doing sports talk, you know, on this show or any other. So, you know, he has definitely, you know, reached a point where he's such a big name and the show's going to do well no matter what, that he doesn't have to pay as close of attention to the details. And that is unfortunate. You know, like the best example of that, I don't know why he ever talks about baseball, but he was talking about how one time he was discussing Shohei Ohtani, I think while he was still on the Angels, and someone should offer 5 first-round picks for Shohei Ohtani. You can't trade draft picks in Major League Baseball. Like, that's a perfect example. You know, as you get to that level, you can overlook the details, the fundamentals, the stuff that as a young aspiring broadcaster you'd never forget. But yeah, Sangapolo Tele, I definitely asked around a little bit and tried to figure out, you know, what the correct pronunciation is. With recruits, it's tough. It can be hard because you don't always have reliable information there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to give an SSA to that, Dirk. I don't fully get what you're asking, but hopefully you enjoyed the insight there. So let's wrap up some Tuesday trivia. This one from Bud. Former Oregon quarterback George Shaw played for Oregon from 1951 to 1954. You have any idea how not born I was at that time? Where was he picked overall in the 1955 NFL draft? I'm pretty sure, and this came up on a trivia question from a while ago, I think he was Oregon's first number 1 overall pick. So I'm going to go with number 1. And that's how we end today's show, with a little Tuesday trivia. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.